My wife demanded the house in our divorce. You can't afford to fight me. I agreed calmly, until court began and the city's toughest divorce lawyer took the seat beside me. I replied, "You're right." She served me papers in court, only to see the city's most feared, expensive divorce attorney sit down next to me. He looked at her and said he doesn't have to afford me. I'm his older brother. My wife, Evelyn, informed me last Tuesday that she wanted a divorce. There was no sadness in her eyes, no regret in her voice. It was a declaration of victory. We were sitting in the living room of the house we had spent 8 years turning into a home, and she was speaking to me with the detached finality of a corporate executioner. "It's over, Tom," she said, placing a file folder on the coffee table. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. These are my terms." I didn't open the folder. I didn't have to. She was more than happy to list her demands. She wanted the house. The house that my grandfather had helped me put a down payment on. She wanted 70% of our shared savings. She wanted spousal support for a minimum of 5 years. It wasn't a negotiation. It was an unconditional surrender. When she was finished, she leaned back, a smug, confident smirk on her face. "And I don't want to fight on this, Tom," she said, her voice dripping with condescending pity. "Let's be realistic. You're a high school woodshop teacher. You make a decent living, but you can't afford a real lawyer. My guy will bury you in legal fees before you even see the inside of a courtroom. It's better for you to just agree to the terms and walk away." I just sat there looking at this woman I had loved, this woman I had built a life with, and I felt a profound sense of coldness settle over me. She didn't just want to leave me. She wanted to ruin me. She saw me as weak, as an obstacle to be crushed and discarded. Her biggest weapon, she thought, was my inability to fight back. I let the silence hang in the air for a long moment. Then I looked at her, my face a mask of resignation, and I said the 2 words she was expecting to hear. "You're right." The relief on her face was immediate. She had won. The humble, simple teacher wasn't going to put up a fight. She stood up, smoothed her skirt, and said, "Good. I'm glad you're being sensible about this. You'll be served with the official papers next week." Then she walked out of the room. Here's what Evelyn knew. She knew I was a man of simple means. She knew I didn't have tens of thousands of dollars to throw at a legal battle. She also knew that I had a brother, an older brother named Marcus. What she also knew, and what she was banking on, was that Marcus and I hadn't spoken in 5 years. Marcus isn't a teacher. Marcus is a shark. He is, without exaggeration, the most feared and expensive divorce attorney in the state. He's a legal predator whose name makes other lawyers nervous, and he was, for all intents and purposes, no longer a part of my life. We had a falling out after our parents died. It was over the family home, the house we grew up in. I wanted to keep it, to preserve it as a memory, a place for our families together. I'm sentimental like that. Marcus, ever the pragmatist, saw it as an ill-quid asset. He wanted to sell it, divide the money, and move on. We had a bitter, terrible argument that ended with us on opposite sides of a canyon of stubborn pride. We hadn't spoken since. Evelyn had witnessed the tail end of that fallout. She saw me as completely and permanently isolated from the only powerful person in my family. In her strategic calculation, my greatest potential asset was a dead one. She was wrong. For 3 days after her announcement, I was in a dark place. She was right about one thing. I couldn't afford to fight her, not on her terms. The thought of losing my home, my savings, everything I had worked for was suffocating. On the 4th day, I hit rock bottom. And from there was nowhere to go but up. I swallowed every ounce of my pride, a pride that had cost me my brother for 5 years, and I found his private cell phone number. My hand was shaking as I dialed. I expected it to go to voicemail, or to be answered by a sharp-voiced assistant. But after 2 rings, a familiar deep voice answered. "Hello, Marcus," I said, my own voice sounding weak and foreign to my ears. "It's Tom." There was a long pause. For a moment, I thought he was going to hang up. "Tommy," he finally said, the old nickname sounding strange after so many years. "What's wrong?" And it all came pouring out. I told him everything. I told him about Evelyn's demands, her lawyer, her coldness, and I told him her final arrogant taunt. "You can't afford a lawyer to fight me." Another long, heavy silence stretched between us. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. The surprise was gone, replaced by something I hadn't heard in years. It was the sound of a protective older brother. It was the sound of steel. She said, "What?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I repeated her words. "Okay," he said. "When and where is the first court appearance?" "Next Tuesday at the downtown courthouse," I told him. "I'll clear my schedule," he said. "Don't talk to her. Don't talk to her lawyer. Don't sign anything. Just show up on Tuesday. I'll meet you there." We hung up. I sat there, my heart pounding with a mixture of terror and a terrifying hope. Evelyn thought she had disarmed me. She had no idea she had just handed me a nuclear weapon. She was about to learn a very hard lesson about what family really means. Update 1. The morning of the preliminary hearing was a miserable, rainy Tuesday. It felt appropriate. I walked into the courthouse alone, feeling every bit the part of the defeated man Evelyn expected me to be. I was wearing my best and only suit, the one I usually reserve for weddings and funerals. It felt like a bit of both. I entered the designated courtroom. It was a sterile, impersonal room that smelled of old paper and anxiety. Evelyn was already there, sitting at the plaintiff's table. She looked incredible. She was wearing a sharp, dark blue power suit, her hair perfectly styled. She looked confident, smug, and ready for a corporate takeover. Next to her sat her lawyer, a man in his 50s, with a self-satisfied smirk permanently affixed to his face. They were laughing quietly together as I walked in. She saw me and her smile faltered for a second, replaced by a look of pity. She probably expected me to look more broken. I just met her gaze, my expression blank, and walked over to the defendant's table. I sat down, placed my old briefcase on the table, and waited. Her lawyer stood up and sauntered over. "Mr. Miller," he said, his voice oozing condescension. "I'm glad to see you're here. I trust you've had time to review my client's very generous proposal. If you're prepared to sign today, we can make this quick and painless." "I'm waiting for my counsel," I said quietly. He actually chuckled. "Your counsel? Good luck with that. Let's not drag this out." He walked back to his table. The bailiff called the court to order. The judge, a stern-looking woman, entered and took her seat. She looked down at the docket. "Miller versus Miller," she announced. "Are both parties present and represented?" Evelyn's lawyer stood up. "Yes, Your Honor. Alan Davis representing the plaintiff, Mrs. Evelyn Miller." The judge looked at me and the defendant. Before I could speak, the heavy doors at the back of the courtroom swung open with a resounding thud. Every head in the room turned. Walking down the aisle was my brother, Marcus Sterling. He wasn't just wearing a suit. He was wearing a suit of armor, tailored from what looked like spun midnight, and pure intimidation. He moved with the predatory grace of a panther, his expensive leather briefcase swinging at his side. A wave of whispers rippled through the courtroom as other lawyers and court staff recognized him. His reputation preceded him. He didn't look at anyone else. His eyes were fixed on me. He walked directly to my table, put a hand on my shoulder, and squeezed it gently. Then he sat down beside me, placing his gleaming briefcase on the table with a solid, definitive click. The sound echoed in the silent room. I looked over at Evelyn. Her smug expression had been wiped clean from her face. It was replaced by a mask of utter horrified disbelief. Her jaw was slack. Her eyes were wide. She looked like she had just seen a ghost walk in and sit down at the opposing table. Her lawyer looked even worse. The color had drained from his face and his smirk was gone, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated terror. He knew exactly who my brother was. Marcus leaned over to me, ignoring the rest of the room. "Sorry I'm late. Little brother," he whispered, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "Tfic was hell." Then he straightened up, his demeanor all business. He looked directly at the judge. "Marcus Sterling, Your Honor," he said, his voice a commanding baritone that filled the room. "Repenting the defendant, Mr. Thomas Miller." The judge's eyebrows shot up. She knew the name. Everyone did. Then Marcus turned his gaze slowly, deliberately towards Evelyn. He looked at her, then at her terrified lawyer, and he gave them a cold, predatory smile. "My apologies for the delay," he said, his voice dripping with mock politeness. Then he looked at Evelyn again and delivered the line that shattered her entire world. "He doesn't have to afford me. I'm his older brother." The game had just changed. Evelyn thought she was coming to a surrender. She had just walked into an ambush. Marcus opened his briefcase, pulled out a thick stack of files, and the demolition began. He immediately rejected all of her initial demands, declared them predatory, and filed in bad faith, and announced our intention to file a counter-petition. He said we would be seeking a full forensic audit of all marital assets and expenditures for the last 3 years, and that we would be demanding Evelyn pay for all of Tom's legal fees. Evelyn's lawyer just stood there stammering. He was a minnow who had just been cornered by a great white shark. The battle was over before it even began. Update 2. The 2 months following that first court appearance were a legal blitzkrieg. My brother Marcus does not do things by halves. He doesn't just practice law, he wages war. Evelyn and her lawyer thought they were going to roll over me. Instead, they found themselves on the receiving end of a relentless, systematic assault. The first thing Marcus did was file a motion for discovery that was, by all accounts, a thing of terrible beauty. It wasn't a request. It was a demand for every single financial document Evelyn had touched for the last 5 years. Bank statements, credit card bills, work expense reports, Venmo transactions, everything. Her lawyer filed a motion to have it dismissed as overly broad and harassing. The judge, who was clearly intimidated by my brother's reputation, took one look at Marcus's justification and approved our motion in full. Evelyn was legally obligated to turn over everything. She thought she was clever, that she had hidden her tracks. She had no idea she was dealing with a man who employed a team of forensic accountants for fun. While Evelyn was drowning in paperwork, Marcus went after her personally. He scheduled a series of depositions, not just with her, but with her closest friends, her family, and even a few of her colleagues. His strategy was simple: apply pressure from all sides until the truth was squeezed out. The breakthrough came during the deposition of Evelyn's best friend, a woman named Chloe. Chloe was fiercely loyal to Evelyn, but she was no match for my brother. He was polite, charming, and utterly ruthless. For 3 hours, he questioned her about Evelyn's spending habits, her work trips, her general happiness in our marriage. Then he asked the question that broke the case open. "Miss Albright," he said, "can you tell me about Mr. David Kincaid?" I saw Chloe flinch. The name was unfamiliar to me. Marcus just waited. Chloe tried to play dumb, but Marcus produced a stack of credit card statements from a card I never knew Evelyn had. A card linked to our joint savings account, an account she had been siphoning money from for over a year. He pointed to a series of charges: a hotel in the wine country, jewelry from a high-end boutique, expensive dinners for 2. Miss Miller was on a work conference on these dates, Marcus said, but her employer has confirmed no such conference existed. You were not with her, so I ask you again. Who is David Kincaid? Chloe broke. Under the penalty of perjury, she admitted it. David Kincaid was the man Evelyn had been having an affair with for the last 18 months. He was a wealthy real estate developer she had met through her old job. It all clicked into place. The secrecy, the financial demands, the confidence. She wasn't just leaving me. She was leaving me for someone else. She was trying to strip mine our marriage for assets to take with her into her new upgraded life. Her plan was to use my money to fund her future with her lover. The deposition of her lover, David, was even more illuminating. He was a smug, arrogant man, but his arrogance crumbled under Marcus's relentless questioning. He admitted to the affair. He admitted that he and Evelyn had planned the divorce together. He even admitted that it was his idea for her to demand the house and spousal support, telling her that I would be too poor and too weak to fight back. They had underestimated me. They had underestimated my family. With these depositions, Evelyn's case was not just weakened, it was annihilated. She had committed perjury in her initial filings by claiming she was a faithful wife. She had hidden assets and marital funds. She was a liar and a fraud. Her lawyer called Marcus, begging to settle. He said Evelyn was willing to drop all her demands and just walk away. Marcus's reply was cold. "No," he said, "walking away is a privilege she has not earned. We are not settling. We are going to court, and we are going to burn her to the ground." She wanted a fight. Now she has one. Final update. It has been 6 months since I first walked into that courtroom. A man who thought he had lost everything. Today, I can tell you that I was wrong. I didn't lose anything that truly mattered. I gained it all back. The final court date was a formality. Faced with the mountain of evidence against her, the depositions, the forensic accounting reports, the proof of her affair, and her conspiracy to commit fraud, Evelyn had no choice but to surrender completely. Her lawyer, looking tired and utterly defeated, advised her to accept any terms we offered. And the terms my brother drafted were brutal. Evelyn didn't just walk away with nothing. She walked away with less than nothing. She was forced to relinquish any claim to the house, Her demand for spousal support was dismissed with prejudice, and because Marcus was able to prove that she had spent over $60,000 of marital assets on her affair, on hotels, gifts, and vacations with her lover, the judge ordered that amount to be deducted from her share of our savings and returned to me. She left the marriage with a small fraction of her original demand, a mountain of her own legal bills, and the public humiliation of having her entire sordid scheme laid bare in a court of law. The fallout in her personal life was just as devastating. Her lover, David King, faced with the legal and social consequences of his actions, dumped her almost immediately. He was a man who was attracted to a winner, and Evelyn had just suffered a spectacular public defeat. Her friends, many of whom had been forced to testify about her lies under oath, distanced themselves from her. She lost her fiancé, her house, her savings, her boyfriend, and her reputation, all in one fell swoop, all because she underestimated the quiet man she was married to. But the real story, the most important part of this whole chapter, is what happened with my brother. A few weeks after the divorce was finalized, Marcus called me. "Meet me at the old house," he said. I drove out to our parents' home, the house that had been the source of our stupid 5-year feud. I found him on the porch, just sitting on the steps. We didn't talk about the case. We didn't talk about Evelyn. We talked about our dad's terrible fishing trips, our mom's amazing apple pie. We talked about being kids. Finally, after a long silence, he looked at me. "I was wrong, Tommy," he said. "I was so focused on the money, on the asset, that I forgot what this place was. It's our home. I was wrong, too. I admitted I was so stuck in the past. I wasn't willing to see that maybe there was a different future for this place. We didn't sell the house. We decided to keep it together. We've spent the last few weekends out there fixing it up. We're repairing the porch, painting the rooms, bringing it back to life. It's not a memorial to the past anymore. It's a project for our future. A place for our family, the real one, to gather." Working side by side with my brother, tools in hand, has healed a wound I thought would be a scar forever. Evelyn's parting shot to me was that I couldn't afford a lawyer. Her greed, her arrogance, her belief that I was weak and alone, that was the very thing that forced me to make the call that brought my brother back into my life. She thought she was isolating me. Instead, she reunited me with the most important family I have. She tried to leave me with nothing. But as I stand here today with my home secure and my brother by my side, I realize I have a cup for a urine sample and told me results would take 48 to 72 hours. "Is there anything else I should know?" I asked before she left. She looked at me with practiced sympathy. "Try not to spiral before you have answers. I know, that's easier said than done, but worrying won't change the results." I walked out of that room feeling like I was carrying a time bomb inside my own body. Mason went in after me, even though he insisted he wasn't worried. "For solidarity," he said. Christy went last and came out looking like she'd aged 10 years and 15 minutes. The four of us stood in the parking lot afterward, in the most awkward silence of my entire life. Leon leaned against his car with his arms crossed, looking defensive. Christy kept checking her phone like the results might magically appear early. Mason held my hand and said nothing. "This is your fault," Christy finally spat at Leon. "All of this. If you had just been honest from the beginning, if you hadn't pushed for this stupid swap, none of us would be here," Leon shot back. "You wanted excitement, Christy. Well, congratulations. This exciting enough for you. Don't you dare blame me for your disease," Christy screamed. "It's not a disease. It's a condition," Leon yelled. "And I got it from someone else, so technically I'm a victim too." "You're a victim?" I yelled. "That's your takeaway from this. Forget it," Leon said, throwing his hands up. "I'm done. Call me when you all decide to stop treating me like a criminal." He got in his car and drove off. Christy collapsed against her own car and started crying again. Mason squeezed my hand. 48 hours, he said, quietly. "We just have to get through 48 hours. I looked at my sister sobbing in the parking lot at the empty space where Leon's car had been. At the clinic, behind us where our futures were now, sitting in vials waiting to be analyzed. 48 hours. It might as well have been a lifetime. Mason stayed with me the whole time even though he had nothing to worry about. He hadn't been with anyone. I had. 2 days before the swap, I'd slept with a man who couldn't even warn me what he was carrying. When the clinic called, I answered on the first ring. They had all 4 results ready, and only one of us was going to walk away destroyed. The clinic called 48 hours later. I was sitting on Mason's couch pretending to watch TV when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. My heart stopped. I answered before the second ring. "Hi, this is Bailey," I said, my voice coming out steadier than I felt. "Miss Holmes, this is Dr. Warren from the clinic. Your results are in. Are you able to come in this afternoon to discuss them? Can you just tell me over the phone?" I asked. "Please. I can't wait any longer." There was a pause. Then she said, "Your results came back negative. You're clear." The air rushed out of my lungs. I doubled over on the couch and tears spilled down my cheeks before I could stop them. Mason was next to me. Instantly, hands on my shoulders. Panic in his eyes. "Bailey, what's wrong?" "What did they say?" I couldn't speak. I just gave him a thumbs up through my sobbing and watched the terror on his face melt into relief. He pulled me into his chest and held me while I cried. "Thank you." I choked into the phone. "Thank you so." I hung up, and we sat there in silence for a long moment. Then Mason's phone rang. He answered it with shaking hands, even though we both knew he had nothing to worry about. He'd gone to get tested for solidarity, not necessity, but I watched his face anyway as he listened. He nodded once, said, "Okay, thank you," then hung up. Negative, he confirmed. Not that there was any doubt. I laughed through my tears. I know. I just needed to hear it. We had maybe 10 minutes of peace before my phone buzzed. Again. A text from Christy. "Results are in Mom and Dad's house now." She didn't say what her results were. Mason drove. I stared out the window the whole way, trying to figure out how I was supposed to feel. My sister had spent weeks making my life miserable. She'd sabotaged my dates. She'd turned my family against me. She'd slept with my ex-boyfriend. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated, but mostly I just felt hollow. Leon's car was already in the driveway when we arrived. Christy's was parked crookedly on the street, like she'd barely stopped before jumping out. We could hear raised voices before we even reached the front door. Inside was chaos. Christy stood in the middle of the living room with her arms crossed, tight against her chest. She wasn't crying yet, but her eyes were red and swollen like she had been recently. Leon sat on the far end of the couch, looking defensive and small. My parents hovered near the kitchen doorway, clearly lost. Finally, Christy said when she saw me, "Now everyone's here." "What's going on?" my mom asked. "Christy wouldn't tell us anything until you arrived." Christy took a shaky breath. "I wanted everyone to hear this together." She looked at Leon with pure venom. Tell them what you told me 3 weeks ago and then decided to keep secret." Leon's jaw tightened. "I already told you. I'm sorry. I don't know what else you want from me. I want you to say it." Christy screamed out loud to everyone. "So they all know exactly what kind of person you are." The room went silent. Leon looked around at all of us, then dropped his head. "I have an STD, he said, quietly. "I found out about a month ago. I should have told people sooner. I didn't." My mother gasped. My father's face went pale. Mason squeezed my hand. "Bailey," my mom said, turning to me with terror in her eyes. Are you?" "I'm negative," I said quickly. "I got my results today. I'm clear." Relief flooded her face, then confusion. "But if Leon has something and you two were together, we got lucky," I said. Or I did anyway. The implication hung in the air. Everyone slowly turned to look at Christy. She laughed bitterly. It was the kind of laugh that comes right before someone falls apart. "I'm positive," she said. Her voice cracked on the second word. "I tested positive Because this piece of garbage knew he had something and slept with me anyway, and didn't bother to mention it until after. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. Christy, Leon started. I swear I didn't know how serious it was. The doctor said it was manageable, and I was still processing, and I didn't know how to bring it up. Manageable? Christy exploded. You think that makes it okay? I have to live with this forever, Leon. Every relationship I ever have for the rest of my life is going to start with me explaining that. My disgusting, reckless ex-boyfriend infected me because he was too much of a coward to be honest. I'm not disgusting. Leon shot back. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday. Christy screamed. A mistake is shrinking someone's favorite sweater. This isn't a mistake, Leon. This is my life, and you ruined it because you couldn't handle an uncomfortable conversation. She was shaking now, tears streaming down her face, all the fight draining out of her with every word. And you know what the worst part is? She continued, her voice dropping to something broken and raw. I did this to myself. I had Mason, sweet, kind, loyal Mason who never would have done something like this to me, who actually cared about me, who turned out to be a millionaire. She laughed again, and it sounded like glass breaking. I had a millionaire who wanted to take care of me, and I threw him away for this. She gestured at Leon with disgust. For a man who couldn't even give me basic human decency. Christy, I really am sorry, Leon said weakly. Get out, she whispered. What? Get out of this house, she screamed with whatever energy she had left. I don't want to look at you. I don't want to hear your voice. You've done enough damage to last me a lifetime. Literally. Get out. Leon looked around the room, hoping someone would defend him. No one did. My father stepped aside and pointed toward the door. Leon grabbed his jacket and left, without another word. The door closed behind him, and Christy collapsed onto the couch. The screaming was over. What? Replaced, it was worse. Quiet, shattered, sobbing. The sound of someone who had finally run out of people to blame. I ruined everything, she whispered, between sobs. I had the perfect guy, and I threw
Eyes closed and her face pressed against my hair. The caption said, "Please pray for my sweet daughter-in-law during this difficult time. She's struggling, but our family will get her through it." 200 likes, 40 comments about what an amazing mother-in-law she was. A dozen people tagging mental health resources for me to read. I screenshotted everything and sent it to my best friend Danielle with the message, "Am I crazy or is this insane?" She called me immediately. "What the actual hell is wrong with this woman? She's posting about your ex-Stan miscarriage on Facebook and making it sound like you're having a breakdown." I told her everything. The dinner, the texts, the prayer group, Mac moving to the guest room. Danielle was quiet for a long time and then said, "You need to get out of there. This woman is trying to destroy you and your husband is helping her do it." I said, "I can't just leave." "Where would I go?" She said, "You can stay with me, but Elise, I'm serious. What she's doing is not normal. This is calculated. She's setting you up for something, and you need to figure out what it is before she finishes building her case." I thanked her and hung up and sat in my kitchen wondering how my life had fallen apart so completely in 2 weeks. I'd lost my baby. I'd lost my husband. I'd lost my reputation. And Lena was out there, collecting sympathy and prayers, while I sat alone in a house that didn't feel like mine anymore. I agreed to help set up Lena's anniversary party, but I wasn't going there to fold napkins. She thought sending me into her house alone was safe because she'd already convinced everyone I was the crazy one. But women, like Lena, always have secrets, and I was going to search every room until I found something that proved who she really was. She had no idea what she was handing me when she gave me those keys. What I found in her closet changed absolutely